So it's taken me until the end of April. It is literally the last day of April 2022 to realize that when I was married the first time in August of 2006, it took my now ex-husband less than 1 month to start deploying abusive tactics. And of course, I mean, there were lots of other tactics that he was using that were, in some cases, sometimes more obvious, even before we were married, before we were engaged. Like, from the time we started living together, he was employing tactics to control me. But I just today learned that one of the things that he did a month into our marriage was a very specific, identifiable form of coercive control. And I am sad to say that the way that I learned about this just a moment ago was through a podcast that wasn't even about a heterosexual couple. It was about a homosexual couple, where one continuously accuses the other of cheating, so the one being accused will voluntarily submit to GPS tracking, financial tracking, a complete invasion of privacy and removal of autonomy in an effort to convince the accuser that they are not, in fact, doing anything wrong in the relationship with regard to cheating. We were married August 8th, I think it was. Yeah, that sounds right. August 8th, 2006. And I was 20 years old. He never actually proposed. He tortured me all day long on Valentine's Day. Ignored me, treated me like shit, let me work an entire shift at the local bowling alley where he was a customer. He had a team bowling league event that night. Came in front of all his friends, his whole team, all these people that he knew that we socialized with, ignored me, treated me like he didn't even know me, even though we were living together and it was Valentine's Day. And when I went home and I was upset at the way that he had treated me all day, he pulls out a little bullshit ring and doesn't ask me to marry him, tells me, "You need to marry me." Literally. That is his exact words. I can still see the kitchen. I remember, unfortunately, all the details of that traumatic moment. I didn't realize at the time that it would be a source of trauma. I didn't realize at the time that he would later go back and say things like, "Well, I never asked you to marry me." No, he didn't ask me. He told me I had to. But he would say things like, "Well, I never asked you to marry me," indicating that it was like my fault that we were married, that I had read something more into him living with me and eating the food that I bought, using the electricity I paid for, the internet service I paid for, living under the roof that I paid the rent at. He couldn't keep a job. We were together, all said and told, 8 years, I think. And during that time, the longest consecutive period of time that he held a job was less than 6 months. So he's mooching off of me sucking me dry financially when I'm only 20 years old. I literally could not afford to take care of myself, let alone him as well. Oh, and his child from a previous relationship. And after treating me that way all day long on Valentine's Day, then saying and telling me, you need to marry me. And then years later, after we were married, saying, well, I never even asked you to marry me. That's the level of manipulation and abuse and gaslighting that I was dealing with in my first marriage. Anyway, like I began to say, I was 20 years old on our wedding day. And about 5 weeks later, I turned 21. And someone that I had been friends with since I was a freshman in high school. This guy dated my very best friend, so I had absolutely zero designs on him, and to this day I believe he never had any designs on me either. He was at my wedding. He was a wedding guest. He helped set up the audio. He was a behind the scenes guy helping my wedding day come together. Like, more of a brother than anything, and we weren't close. But I guess he wasn't really close with a lot of other people either. So on my 21st birthday, and he was a year older than me and my very best friend, he was already 21, he asked if he could buy me a drink at a bar in the town where I lived on my 21st birthday. And I said, yeah, sure. Money was tight. I was providing room and board not only for myself, but for my new husband and his child as well, working, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 jobs at the time. And I don't think I was able to go to college right around then because I was busy supporting a bunch of dead weight. So yeah, I was very open to the idea of someone else paying the $4 for me to have a legal drink at a bar on my 21st birthday. And I called up my new husband from work and I said, hey, my friend, I'll just call him D for now, is gonna drive all the way up here to buy me a drink at the bar, the only bar in the town where we lived, in this little podunk middle of nowhere. Do you want to come too? And he didn't want to come. He had zero interest. He declined the invitation. And I don't know how it was that I became aware that he was driving by outside. I think he must have been calling or texting me. I went from my office job, so at 5 o'clock, I got off work, I drove over to the bar. My friend met me there. He bought me and I ordered Tequila Rose, I think is what it's called. It's a cream-based drink, very low alcohol content. I was newly 21. Up until this point, the only alcoholic beverage I had ever had was like Smirnoff Ice. I don't even know if they still make that stuff. But it was like a 3.5% alcohol. It was mostly sugar and carbonation. So, I mean, to be able to go into a bar and order a drink, that was the only thing I had ever heard of before. And only because another friend of ours had a bottle of this stuff at her house. So I'd read the label while we were over one day. And that's how naive I was. That was how clean cut I was. I was not a drinker. I had never used like hard drugs. I had probably smoked pot twice in my whole life at this stage. Like, I am still very green. I had no protections from the evil of the world. I had almost no meter against which to measure anything. I was so susceptible. I was a victim. I was a low-hanging fruit of a victim when this deadbeat ex-husband of mine started targeting me for abuse and then grooming me and eventually deploying what I now very clearly recognize as domestic abuse. Like, many years of it I endured and never knew that that's what I was experiencing because no one had ever told me. And he couldn't have picked a more willing victim who legit had no idea what was happening to her. So, yeah, now that I think about it, I'm sure he was text messaging me and telling me that he was headed over to the bar. And at first, I'm sure I thought, oh, great, he's going to come and have a drink with us. It's my birthday. I'm a newlywed. We're going to celebrate. And my friend is paying the bill. You know, the whole like $10, $15, $20 or whatever the bar tab was going to come to, he was going to cover it. That was huge because I literally didn't have the extra $10 to go to the bar on my 21st birthday because I was busy supporting my deadbeat new husband. But then I quickly realized through his abusive text messages that this was not, he wasn't coming over to celebrate. He wasn't coming over to bring any joy. He wasn't coming over for anything that I was going to look back on fondly. And I told my friend, thank you. I'm going to be in trouble. I need to get back home. And he said, well, you know, you're newly 21. You've just had a shot because, you know, tequila rose is like, it's a sissy drink. And when I ordered that as an actual beverage, they didn't know what to do. So they poured it in a shot glass. I guess normally it's a ingredient for like mixed drinks. To this day, I've never had tequila rose again. That was all I knew of it. As my friend D is walking me out to my car, because my car is parked in the street in front of the bar, I see my first husband, my abuser, driving by in his pickup truck. And he screams out the window at me as he drives by. Something about, now I know who you're cheating on me with. Or nice to see who you're cheating on me with, or something like that. Oh, maybe it was, I just wanted to know who you were cheating on me with. Like, that's what it was. The end of it was, you were cheating on me. Because I accepted an invitation from a platonic friend for him to buy me a single drink at 5:15 in the afternoon on my 21st birthday. And my birthday is on September 20th. I was married, I believe, I think it was August 8th. So that's how soon he deployed that specific tactic for coercive control. And I can't believe that I made it to 36 and a half years old and just learned this evening from a podcast that that's what that was. I've been teamed up with other survivors of domestic abuse and coercive control for over 5 years now. And we all lament together how we were prime for the picking. We were weak. We were easy to spot. We had obvious signs to predators that we would be easy to control and abuse. We wore our wounds openly. We didn't know how to guard ourselves. We didn't know what to look for in predators. And so it was easy for the predators to find us. Even 5 years into counseling with these women, support groups with these women, countless other revelations that, oh my God, that's what that was. All this time later, and 16 and a half years after the fact, I'm still realizing, oh shit, that's one more horrible thing he did to me. That has damaged me. That has broken me. That for years after he said horrible, hateful, angry, controlling, abusive things to me, and he dwelled on that moment of driving by and screaming at me in public that I was cheating on him. And that's how he got me to agree to let him have access and control to all of my financial accounts. Not just a joint checking. I mean, he had complete control over everything. He had control over my personal checking. I didn't even have any credit cards. He had complete control over my cell phone account. He got complete control over my lease at the place where I was living. He got access to my medical records. He got to be listed on my employment records. Like, he could have called up any place that I had any affiliation to and requested anything he wanted, any of my confidential information, my medical records, my employment history, my credit reports, my bank accounts, anything and everything. He made me turn over control of to him to prove that I wasn't cheating, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. Because I didn't know how else to prove to my accuser. I thought that I had to prove to my accuser. I thought that I had actually done something wrong because of what my accuser had accused me of. This is the society that I was brought up in. This is the home that I was raised in, conditioned me to believe that if some piece of shit, deadbeat, baggage man accused me of cheating, that meant that my only defense, that I needed to defend myself firstly, and secondly, that my only defense was to turn over access to everything in my life to this man, and that I should be happy about it because at least I had a husband. And again, we were married in 2006. This is how recently society had conditioned me at a 20-year-old in 2006 that I should just be grateful to have a husband at all. I was raised in California. We think California is this ultra-liberal, far left-leaning, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not. It's got a couple of far left-leaning cities, sure. But I spent the first 30 years of my life in California believing all this bullshit. Believing that if I had a man in my life, I had value. Believing that if I didn't have a man in my life, it was because I was worthless and I had done something wrong to offend mankind. That I was so grateful to have a husband at 20 years old that when he accused me and screamed at me in public at 5:30 in the afternoon on a business day, that I was cheating on him, that I had to immediately hand over all of my autonomy, all of my independence, all of my privacy to him to prove that his allegations were false. And all these years later, still living on the West Coast, and everybody thinks, oh, Washington, Oregon, California, they're such liberal states, blah, blah, blah. I've only ever lived in these quote-unquote liberal states. At almost 37 years old, learned just a moment ago another form of coercive control that he was using against me from a podcast. I didn't learn it from a therapist. I didn't learn it from a support group. I didn't learn it from a, feminist outreach campaign. I learned it from a fucking true crime podcast where they were detailing the domestic abuse within a homosexual couple. Not even a heterosexual couple, which was what I was involved in. shameful. It's really shameful. And it's moments like this that I think about all the BS I've seen posted on the internet about how women always get such deals in custody court, and they always make out in divorces, and they always blah, blah. It's all bullshit. I don't know who is managing the PR for the abusers' rights campaign, but they're doing such a damn good job. Because it is common belief that, well, the kids are always going to go with the mom, but in reality, when you look at the numbers, they almost never do. And I saw on social media today somebody mouthing off about, I wish women had to pay child support the way that men do. Women have to pay child support more often than men, and they pay higher amounts than men do, even though women earn less. So all that rhetoric that's being crammed down our throats, apparently from childhood, about how women are so advantaged and men are disadvantaged when there's a breakup of the relationship, it's complete BS. The statistics prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. Take any sample you want, any random sample within a county, within a state, within a region, within the entire country. It does not matter. Pick your sample. You're going to see that women pay child support to men more often. They pay higher amounts to men more often, even though they earn less than men in every single one of these circumstances. Men get the children, men get the money, men get control over the property, men get every benefit in a separation because they're the only ones who, according to the court system and those who have influence and control over it, have any authority to own property. Women are so disadvantaged that not only do they not get to keep their kids, they don't get to collect child support. They don't get to collect accurate amounts of child support according to guidelines. They don't get to retain a fair share of the assets. They don't get to stay in their homes. They don't get the benefit and support that men are eligible for. So far beyond any of that, we are abused by the system, by men in general, so severely that we don't even know it. 16 and a half years later, I am still figuring out all the various ways that I was abused, and not only didn't know it at the time, but even post-separation. We've been split for 10 years. I just figured it out. And I didn't figure it out from any support services or social services or welfare or court mediators or therapists or any of the places that you would think a person would learn, hey, this is a form of coercive control. This is domestic abuse. And from what you're describing, this is what your ex did to you. No, I learned it from a goddamn podcast. A podcast. Not about heterosexual relationship, homosexual relationship. That is how in denial we are as a society about the abuse inflicted by men upon women. "16 years later, I figured that shit out. What else am I going to learn 16 years